kill cell.
What they think happened with our meteor here, they think probably originated out in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It would have been core material from a planet or an iron deposit on another planet that blew up out in space. It's caught up in the asteroid belt in some sort of collision, or possibly the gravity of Jupiter kind of pulls it out of the asteroid belt, sends it towards our planet, hits our planet 50,000 years ago. When it came in, they think it would have been approximately 150 feet or 45 meters across, which of course, a lot of the numbers from a lot of this are estimations, because when it hits the planet, it explodes. They think about 80% of the meteor is either vaporized or pulverized into little tiny particles the size of a grain of sand. And all that is actually mixed in out here with the sand, and the other 20% rains down around the rim. So even today, there's millions of pieces of meteorite on the rim of the crater, mostly on the south side of the crater out here. But this was the biggest piece, and what they think happened is it started to break apart before it hit the planet. And these are a couple of trailing pieces that would have broken off the back. The blast itself ejected those over about 2 miles away. So this was found 2 miles away over at Canyon Diablo. And most people would think this would be sitting down in the bottom. That would make perfect sense. But all the big pieces that survived were ejected over there, which is great because otherwise they wouldn't have really had very many, at least not big pieces remaining. But this was the biggest, 1,406 pounds. And there's a piece in Chicago today. It's about 1,000 pounds from here, 1,050-pound piece in the New York Natural History Museum. And they're actually spread out all over the world, because when they're mining here, all the big pieces they were finding, they were selling off to different museums and collectors. And so they're in collections all over the world today. So, funny story with this one, actually, it sits out there for 50,000 years. No one has any idea it's out there. It's actually in an area that's really hard to reach, and right on the rim of Canyon Diablo. And what happens is one day the head of the mining operation is just going to get the mail over at the railroad. He rides back along the canyon and then happens to notice that this is just sitting on the rim of the canyon in there. Apparently gets off his horse and tries to pick it up. Probably picks it with his cowboy boot. Probably says something like, "Dang, that's a big chunk of meteorite," But it's just sitting there. He goes back and gets a bunch of guys. They spend it's 4 guys that spend the entire day trying to figure out how to pick this up and put it into a wagon. They had a wooden wagon and a mule and a bunch of timbers. And finally, they realized they had to just keep flipping it onto something a little taller and a little taller until finally they could flip it into the wagon. That one poor mule had to drag the thing all the way up here. They get up to the rim of the crater, and there's an old stone cabin where they just put it in a cabin on the floor of the building. And what happens is every day they're out here digging holes and drilling holes around the crater, trying to find the big chunk of meteorite. And every night they go back to that building and sit down and probably put their feet up on this. Apparently they said they were just stacking tools on it, and they had mostly used it as a saddle rack, believe it or not. So what we have here is the world's oldest and most valuable saddle rack. It could be up to 4 billion years old, so it's pretty old. And today, just based on its weight, it could be worth millions, up to maybe $10 million, something like that. So. But every day they go back, they put their feet up on this, looking over the maps, trying to figure out where the big chunk of meteorite was hiding. And little did they know, after all those years that it was sitting in that building with them. What actually happens is when a meteor comes in, they think it comes in from the southeast, hits the planet, blows up. 80% of it's vaporized, like I said earlier. The rest of it rains down around the rim, all the way around the outside of the crater. And they think under the surface there's going to be a piece of meteorite the same size as the bottom of the crater. And they're digging there, thinking they're going to be able to dig this up, cut it up, and sell it to the railroad as scrap metal. What actually happens, though, they dig holes and drill holes for all those years and never find it until finally they give up during the Depression. Around us, the land here, the crater itself, is still owned by the family that had the original mining claim. So it is private land, or a family-owned meteor crater. The land around us is called Bar T Bar Ranch, which is the second largest ranch in Arizona, and huge ranch, hundreds of thousands of acres, over 300,000 acres owned, plus land that they've leased from the government. So it's a massive ranch that goes back 15, 18 miles back into the desert. All the stuff around here is part of the ranch, because a lot of people see that, and your first thought is that's probably another little impact crater. They do believe there are other craters around here initially, but you have to remember the crater's 50,000 years old, so any of those small craters would have eroded away. This is what's known as a stock tank. So from above it looks like an impact crater. From the ground, it's basically it's a big mud puddle full of cows, basically. So, and that's what they do. They just move the cattle from tank to tank and water them there. That's how they utilize the desert down there. So, okay, so the.
Вот такое место решил метеорит.